All right. 3.5 statistics notes is sampling and surveys. So as we go through 3.5, we're going to look at some different ways of bias and how they occur. Okay. So there's three things that we're looking at here, three different objectives. And again, explaining those and looking at those are um, what we're looking at for 3.5. So the first objective is to explain how undercoverage can lead to bias. So undercoverage occurs when some members of the population are less likely to be chosen or cannot be chosen for the sample. So again, less likely or not chosen cannot be chosen. So this is undercoverage. So undercoverage leads to bias when the undercovered individuals differ from the population in ways that affect their response. Okay, so again, leads to bias when the undercovered differ from the population in which ways that affect their response. The list of individuals from which a sample will be drawn is called the sampling frame. If the sampling frame doesn't contain every member of the population, there will be undercoverage. So let's take a look at the first example here. And it says, how long can you sleep? So how long before school starts do students get out of bed on average? Administrators survey a random sample of students on each school bus one morning. Describe how undercoverage might lead to bias in this study. So you need to make sure that you read the survey sampling. Okay, and what would cause that bias? And what I see here is as who they are surveying. They're surveying a sample of students on each school bus. Okay, so that means they're only sampling students that rode the bus. There's other ways students can get to school. They can walk, they can get a ride from parents. Okay, so the undercoverage here would be they're only looking at students that arrive on the school bus. So, to answer this, we would say students who take the bus probably have to wake up earlier than other students. So, students who take the bus probably have to wake up. That's a B. Wow. Probably have to wake up earlier than other students. Okay. So, we're really looking at three things. The first thing here is, who did they interview? So answer the question of who they actually interviewed. They interviewed the students of the bus, and what does that result? The second thing is, who did they not interview? Okay. So who did they not interview for the second thing? I'm just going to put a little two kind of circled, but you wouldn't do this in the actual answer. You would just write it out. But the second thing we're doing is students who did they not interview? Okay. So who did they not interview? Because the sample includes only students who take the bus, sample includes only, that is terrible, includes CL, there you go, only students who take the bus and not other students. The administrators estimate of the average age time is likely to be too large. Okay. Not age, average. Jeez, oh Pete. Okay, so let's read through this again. Let me kind of explain this. So, how long before school? So, I want you to describe how undercoverage might lead to bias in this. So, again, there's three things that you're looking at. I didn't do a great job explaining number two. Number one, students who take the bus. So, we're looking at only the students who take the bus, probably, and then comparing that to what the normal or the other students would do. So, students who take the bus probably have to wake up earlier than other students. That's because they have to get up, wait for the bus, and the bus goes around. Okay, so because the sample includes only students who take the bus and not other students, who would those other students be? Students that get a ride from a parent, students that walk. Okay, you could list both of those, or in this case, just put both other students. Okay, and then the last thing is then the direction. The administrator's estimate of the average time is likely to be too large. So the direction's more than. Okay, it's likely to be too large. Okay, and again, why is that? Because those students would wake up earlier as opposed to someone who can get out of bed, eat breakfast real quick, and then a parent takes them to school. So again, the third thing is looking at. So the first thing is who did they interview and what was the result? Okay, who did they not interview, and then what direction did the interview take you? So again, this right here is what we're looking at under coverage. The under coverage for this one would be students that got a ride from a parent and students that walk or ride their bike to school. Okay. The second objective is to explain how non-response can lead to bias. Non-response occurs when an individual chosen for the sample can't be contacted or refuses to participate. Okay. So a non-response leads to bias when the individuals who can't be contacted or refuse to participate would respond differently from those who do participate. The best way to reduce the effect of non-response is to follow up with people who don't respond the first time. So maybe giving them a call, going to their door. Again, we talk a lot about this with the census. Some people just choose not to respond, and that's for everybody. They need to. So we can't confuse voluntary response and a non-response. The non-response can only occur after a sample has been chosen. Okay, in a voluntary response sample, every individual has opted to take part. So they're either in or they're out. A non-response only occurs after a sample has been chosen. So let's take a look at this next example. Okay. It says 300 people participated in a free 12-week weight loss course at a community health clinic. After 1 year, administrators emailed each of the 300 participants to see how much weight they had lost since the end of the course. Only 56 participants responded to the survey. The mean weight loss for this sample was X bar equals 13.6 pounds. Describe how non-response might lead to bias in this study and explain the likely direction of the bias. Okay, so first of all, we're dealing with a mean here. Okay, so this is not a proportion, this is a mean problem. We've got to make sure as we continue to move further on, we're looking at whether this is a mean or a proportion. Okay, so describe how non-response might lead to bias in this study. Well, people who haven't lost weight have not lost weight might be embarrassed and choose not to reply to the survey. Choose to not reply to the survey. Okay. So we're looking at, who chose not to respond. Then the second thing we're looking at is, well, who did respond? Okay. Probably the people that responded are the people that lost the most weight. Okay. So on the other hand, people that lost weight are probably happy to share their success. Okay, so again, the first thing that we did is who were the non-response people. The second thing that we're looking at is who did respond, probably the people that lost weight because they're happy to share. Okay. And then what direction does this mean? This means that the estimate from the sample is likely to be larger than the mean weight loss for all 300 participants. Okay. So again, who did actually not respond when it came to the non-response? So the one was who were the non-response? More than likely people that didn't lose weight, didn't respond. On the other hand, who did respond? Those are the people that did lose weight. They're probably happy to share their success. And then that means that the estimate, what direction did it go? And again, we're looking for likely to be larger, okay? Or we would say likely to be smaller if it was that data showed that, okay? So again, those three things that we're looking for when you explain this, okay, who was non-response, who did respond, and then what direction did the data take us? And then the third objective is explain how other aspects of a survey sample can lead to bias. Response bias occurs when there is a consistent pattern of inaccurate responses to a survey question. So this would be a response bias. Okay, note characteristics of the interview, wording of the questions, respondents being untruthful, and many other factors can lead to response bias. Ways to keep bias to a minimum: select a random sample, avoid undercoverage, non-response, and response bias. Test out the survey on a small group of people before administering it to the entire sample. So just to give an example here, before I go on to the last problem, it says, is cheerleading a sport? Well, it depends on who's asking. So there was a survey given, a cheerleader went around and asked in their actual cheerleading uniform, and 80% of people said yes. When she put on just regular school clothes, only 30% of people that she asked said yes, it is a sport. So again, that would be a sort of response bias, because when she was dressed in uniform, they didn't want to tell her, that it wasn't a sport to her face. Okay, so here's another example. Did you wash your hands? What percent of Americans wash their hands after using the bathroom? It depends on how you collect the data. In a telephone survey of 1,006 US adults, 96% said they always wash their hands after using a public restroom. An observational study of 5,028 adults in public restrooms told a different story. Only 85% of those observed washed their hands after using the restroom. I am hoping now in the days of COVID that is 100%, as it should have been before COVID, but hopefully now we have changed the ways of doing things here. Okay, explain why the results of the two studies are so different. Okay, well, why is that? Well, when asked in person, okay, over the phone, a person is more apt to lie. Okay, so many people might lie about always washing their hands. Because they want to appear to have good hygiene. Okay, when people are observed and not asked directly, the percentage who wash their hands will be smaller. and probably much closer to the truth. Okay. So again, in explaining that, and this right here would be a proportion problem because we're talking about percentages. So this would be a proportion, whereas the last problem was a mean problem. Okay. So you're going to have a couple problems on your homework that deal with this. Again, try to explain them the best of word and use your own wordage if your wordage doesn't make sense. But again, we're kind of looking at those three things of who did they interview, what was the result, who did they not interview, and then what direction did the results take us in.